What's up, my friends? Coach Howie here. In this video, I'm going to talk about if it's worth it to quit weed. I'm going to share with you my experience in hopes that it helps you. So my story is I started smoking weed young, and for years I was in a cycle of addiction, and I used to love smoking weed. I loved the ritual of it. I love the feeling of being high. I love the sound of music. I love the epiphanies and the feelings of creativity. And it spurred in me inspiration. And I would have ideas and I would be excited about them. And then I'd smoke some more weed. And I wouldn't do anything about my dreams. And as time went on, I started to realize that the weed was kind of blocking me. It wasn't helping me. And it was actually causing some real consequences in my life. I became an isolator. I lived a double life. I had an internal life of, I can't wait to get high again. I don't feel comfortable with people. I feel bad about not doing more with my life. And I couldn't talk to anybody about that. I had no ability to communicate and be vulnerable and be honest. And I would treat those feelings with getting high again, and it would feel good. But it always led to depression. That cycle of needing weed to feel okay ends in depression. There's a new study out by a Dr. Daniel Amen, and he studied over 1,000 chronic weed smokers and users, and it ages your brain. In all of them, their brains were older than their chronological age. And that's what it felt like. It felt like I was getting old and depressed and down. The insidious part of weed, though, is I smoke weed and I'd still get those feelings of being high. And I tried quitting so many times, and I kept having very similar challenges. I'd put it down with conviction, start living my life, and my life just flatlined. It was boring, colorless, just flat. And the romancing of getting high would start with just a thought like, oh man, just one hit, just a little relief, just a vacation from life today. And that would gain momentum, turn into an obsession. Bam, there I go again. And it turned into daily, and daily turned into monthly, not once a month, every single day for months. And then years would pass in that cycle. And trying to quit was brutal, and not quitting was even worse. And one time I got over a year of abstinence from everything. And so I didn't smoke any weed, do any drugs, any drinking, anything. And nothing changed. Nothing. And I thought, it's not worth it. Nothing changed. I still feel like a piece of turd in the center of the universe. And I would start again with a little romancing. Started with a little romancing of it. And then, which led to an obsession. Once the obsession gains momentum, it's like a freight train. There's no stopping you. You haven't done it yet, but you're going. And then it was every day, again, in that same cycle. If I sound like a broken record, yes, that's what it was like. It was horrible. It was horrible, and the only relief I had was smoking weed. And not smoking weed was so flat and boring that I didn't know if quitting weed was worth it. I didn't know if I was worth it. And that's ultimately, I think, the truth, the question I had to ask myself. Was I worth it to step out of that depression and that cycle and have the willingness to go through flatness without it, colorlessness? Was I willing to develop skills to feel better? Was I willing to grow? Was I willing to be vulnerable and let people in and process the stuff that I've been stuffing for years? That's the thing about weed addiction. I was 9 months off it, and I heard this song, and it struck a tone with me, and I started crying. And I started just bawling. And I realized at that time I was 40 years old. And I realized I hadn't cried since I was 12 years old, before I started smoking weed. I'd been stuffing it and holding everything down deep for so long. And it was such an epiphany to let it out. I did it for 5 days in a row. I played that same song over again, and I would just go in my room and cry, and it was cathartic. And I started letting go of some of that stuff that I was stuffing with the weed addiction. And I made a real decision that I just wasn't going to go back. And I started to do the inner work and the outer work in my life. I had a willingness to be who I was and what I was, and accept who I am, and have some willingness to step out of my comfort zone and to really find a meaning and purpose in life, a why. Because with a meaning and a purpose, not smoking weed is so worth it. Without a meaning and a purpose and a why, it's pretty flat. If you're like me, you end up going back to it. And it takes work to find that meaning and that why. And you have to be uncomfortable, and you have to make mistakes, and you have to look bad in front of people. And most of the time, they don't care. They're done with it. But you got to learn to process those feelings, those inadequacies, and those insecurities, and understand that most of the fears that we have are just an illusion. And I would have never have known that had I continued in that cycle. So is it worth it? In my experience, it's profoundly worth it to walk away from that life and to walk through the flatness of early abstinence from weed and find a meaning and a why and grow relationships and grow your creativity and grow your esteem and your confidence and your peace of mind. And it's never ending, and it's beautiful, and life is beautiful. Is it worth it? Are you worth it? If you'd like some help in finding that meaning and purpose and leaving the weed life behind, please click the link below and fill out the application, and I'm willing to discuss that with you. Right on. Peace. That's what I got. Yeah. Life is good. You're worth it.